Welcome back to Footballology. So up next we have the Carolina Panthers up for their offseason grade, and this team is exactly right on track. Now, if you're a Panthers fan, hear me out. I'm gonna drop something on you, and you might feel like that I'm crazy or anything like that. And last year was just a sweep. But when you're going through a rebuild process, that first year is always going to be the most crucial and gruesome year, especially when you lost some of the talented players that the Carolina Panthers have lost, like a Christian McCaffrey to injury, Luke Kuechly to retirement, and so many others. So this team is technically right on track for their rebuild. Now, as you can see in 2020, they didn't do much. Teddy Bridgewater was a very average, below average quarterback. He's a backup quarterback, and I think he knows his role now. And I think the NFL knows what Teddy Bridgewater is. And like I said, losing Christian McCaffrey didn't help you guys in the run game. But Robbie Anderson showed up, you guys, in the passing game. DJ Moore showed up a couple of times. Curtis Samuels. So you had some receivers that really showed up and showed out and did some things for you guys. The offensive line play was okay at times. I feel like it could definitely be better, and so that was something that I think they could have improved upon easily. But then we flip it to the defense side of the ball, and when you look at the defense side of the ball currently, they just had a bunch of rookies playing, which that's fine. Jeremy Chin gave you some quality play and definitely show you some signs that he could possibly be a quality starter. Now, the thing I didn't like about Jeremy Chin or what they did with him is they moved him to linebacker. I thought he could easily play that box safety role and be more flexible there, but they moved him to linebacker and he still gave you guys quality play. Trey Boston was just decent for you guys too, and Dante Jackson in his second year actually showed up a little bit too. So it's like you guys are trending in the right direction. A 5-11 season is exactly where you guys are going to be, regardless if Christian McCaffrey was starting or not. You guys are going to still be a really bad team, and that's fine. This is exactly where you want to be because this team is trending in the right direction. Matt Rhule had to come in and really lay down his foundation in this rebuild. So I trust everything that they're doing in Carolina, and I think that 2020 is exactly what it was supposed to be. Moving over to the free agency period, as you guys can see right off the back, they got Pat Elflein at the guard position. Personally, I think he's a better center, but granted, they got him in for 3 years and 13 mil. I think that's a really good deal, and I think he's going to give you some quality play on that offensive line. Cam Irving at tackle, which once again, I think he's just more of a flexible lineman than he is a pure tackle. I like Cam Irving. I think he can play all 5 spots, and so I think that's a really good pickup by them as well. And then you got Hassan Reddick, outside linebacker for 1 year, which is really concerning to me because I think Hassan Reddick just started to find his home when he was with the Arizona Cardinals, especially just let him come off the edge and do his thing. And if I remember correctly, Carolina's going to be playing a traditional 4-3, so I'm not really sure if they're going to stand him up, if he's going to be blitzing more, if they're going to move to a 3-4. I don't know what it's going to look like. Maybe this allows Jeremy Chang to go back to the safety position and really play that box safety role like I was talking about in the opening. Morgan Fox at defensive end is a good acquisition for 2 years. Denzel Perryman, I really like him at the inside linebacker position. And then Rashad Melvin at corner, he was really good for the Colts. Gave them some quality play on the outside. I think he's another quality player as well. David Moore at the wide receiver position was a really solid receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. Really good acquisition. Even Dan Arnold at the tight end position is really solid as well. And then we keep scrolling down the list a little bit more. I think they brought back John Miller for 1 more year. AJ Bouye at the cornerback position, trying to shore up that second cornerback spot next to Dante Jackson is really important. And even Bouye gives you that veteran leadership that you really need at the secondary position as well. So that's going to be really helpful for you guys as well. Scrolling a little bit more, I'm trying to see if there's any other names that stood out in May. So another other name really stood out. Maybe Julian Stafford, maybe outside linebacker, but mainly some of the guys that they got are just core guys. And I know that not Dan, but Matt Rhule has been trying to trend towards getting some of his guys that he knows personally, and that's something that we've seen him do over the last 2 years. And I like that idea because he know who they are, character guys wise, and they're willing to play for him because they know what he expects as well. But I like some of the acquisitions they've done this offseason. Like I said, getting guys like Denzel Perryman is really good. Dan Arnold, I think that's a really underrated acquisition. Even though Dan Arnold didn't do much, I think when he came from Arizona, even though he didn't do much there, I still like it. David Moore has proven that he can be that other receiver. If you guys got Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore doing their thing, David Moore can come in and be that guy. Rashad Melvin, like I said, these are really just clean acquisitions. They're not godly, they're not over the top, they're not big name guys, but they're just clean acquisitions, and I really like them. So the most important part when you're going through these rebuilds or the draft, every time, if you can have a clean draft, your rebuilds are always going to be successful. And I really feel like Carolina had a clean draft, starting out with J.C. Horn at the cornerback position at the 8th overall pick. I think that's quality value for a team. I still feel like they could have easily got a quarterback, and I know they got Sam Darnold in the offseason. I didn't mention that in the free agency period, but they got Sam Darnold and they brought him over with the Jets, and I thought that was a pretty good trade for them. But I'm not sure. I don't believe in Sam Darnold. Maybe Matt Rhule does, but I really don't believe in Sam Darnold. But easily getting J.C. Horn automatically improves this team. It's an impact player in the top 10 position. Then you move on to the second round. You get Terrence Marshall, who was a guy that was anywhere as early as the first round, as late as the third round. Like, we've heard that Terrence Marshall was going to be that receiver that you would want. So getting him another big body receiver that can come in and really compete and not just be there, but compete. And I think he probably could push a guy like DJ Moore or even Robbie Anderson for that 1 or 2 spot. I'm not going to say 1, but definitely that 2 spot. And I'll at least compete for that 3rd spot for sure with David Moore. So, like, I love the way they're stacking the receiving core. And then you move on to Chuba Hubbard. Like, they lose Mike Davis to free agency, I want to say. I think it was free agency because Mike Davis is in Atlanta now. But you lose Mike Davis, and then you bring in a guy like Chuba Hubbard. And I remember reading up on him and doing some research on him. This man could have easily, if at his peak in college, could have easily been a 2nd round pick running back. Easily, hands down. But I think that 2020 hurt him. I think some other stuff happened that really hurt him and hurt his draft stock. And now he's getting picked up in the 4th round. So I think that's a great and quality steal for the Carolina Panthers, especially losing a guy like Davis. So now you still got your 1-2 with Christian McCaffrey coming back off injury. Maybe if Chuba comes out and does his thing, and I know Carolina Panthers fans, like you Panthers fans, don't want to hear this, but maybe we move on for CMC. We'll get a guy like Hubbard in there and do his thing. So I definitely think that's a really solid pick by them. Keith Taylor, a big long corner that I just did some research on. I think that's a really solid pick, and I think it's a really quality pick by them. Once again, you can see that their emphasis was the perimeter of the team. They took care of the trenches for the most part in free agency, but mostly it was about the perimeter. So we're talking about corners, receivers, and guys that play on the outside. You can see Keith Taylor being one of those long corners. That's going to be really interesting, and he can come in and compete. But then Shi Smith, I thought, really stood out to me in the 6th round. I think this is a quality pickup, and like I always talk about, if people are picking up these receivers like Shi Smith in the 1st round, 2nd round, it's ridiculous. You get a guy like Shi Smith who's going to be a gimmick / gadget guy, who's your Curtis Samuel 2.0, if you will, and a guy that can come in and run some of those reverse screens and all those things, and really kind of give you some instant offense or some kind of creative offense. You got him in the 6th round. Great steal, quality pickup, amazing pickup in my opinion, because that's where you want to get those guys, and that's where he's going to get make his most money. He comes in, he does his thing, plays special teams, whatever the case may be, and you don't have to worry about him. And I think, yeah, that's it as far as like transactions that stood out to me. This is still a quality draft, even though they had an abundance of picks. It's one thing to have an abundance of picks and not do anything with them, and then there's teams that had less picks and have done great things with them. So even though they had an abundance of picks, as you can see, they addressed some of their defensive line. They went in and addressed the offensive line. They even got a long snapper from Alabama, which I just find really weird and interesting. But let's see what happens. Maybe he turns into something special. Jared Allen was a long snapper at one point, so it just, you never know what happens with those guys. So, but overall, I think this was a really, really high level draft. Like I said, you go over and you look at it, guys like Hubbard, J.C. Horn, Tommy Tremble, even the tight end, Terrence Marshall, I think is probably the crown jewel of this draft in my opinion. Even J.C. Horn being in the 1st round top 10 pick, I think Terrence Marshall is going to be the guy that really stands out from this draft if any of these guys, and then Hubbard as well. This is a A1 draft in my personal opinion. I said all that to say this. The Carolina Panthers are on track to rebuild this roster into a really competitive roster, and I know Matt Rhule has gotten that label of being the rebuild master, which I think he greatly deserves for sure. But they're on perfect track. If you're a Panthers fan, don't worry, don't be concerned. This season is going to be mediocre. It's not going to be a great season. If you guys stumble into the playoffs, that's cool, but it's going to be, you're in a really tough division and you're in the middle of a rebuild, so just take it for what it is. If you guys end up going, what's it going to be, 9-10 or something? Not 9-10. Where did I get 9-10 from? It's gonna be like 7-10 or something like that, or 10-7 or somewhere around there, 9-8. You guys are gonna. That's the kind of team that you guys are looking for this year. It's gonna be that mediocre team, a middle of the pack team. It's gonna be a tough team. Like, I'm not saying that this team is gonna be trash by any means. It's gonna be a really tough team. And I think the one thing that's gonna hinder this team, if anything, is the development of Sam Darnold. And so that's the one thing that I did not care for this offseason, is that if I was Matt Rhule, I would have rather for him to go out and get his guy, and maybe Sam Darnold is his guy, but I would rather for him to go get a different guy because I'm just not sure if Sam Darnold has what it takes to play at the NFL level. But overall, A1 offseason. Just some offensive line issues. Like I said, the offensive line was decent at best, and they still went out and they got a couple of guys that they could probably improve on the offensive line and give quality play for the next couple of years. They're really good value. Took care of the perimeter at a high level, getting guys like Terrence Marshall, David Moore, Shi Smith, and then you already have Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore on the roster. Like, they are going to have a competitive team, and I think that's going to be most important because whoever the 22 guys are that line up for an offense and defense are going to be out there. Brian Burns is still on the roster. Like, there's so many bodies and so many quality players on this roster that I think they have not overpaid for, and they got quality value for, and they're getting great return on. And it's like Derek Brown even at the defensive tackle position. It's just crazy. I love this roster. I think it's trending in the right direction. Like I said, you guys are going to be in a middle pack team, and I think that's what's the most important to keep in mind. But next year, oh, better watch out for Carolina next year, and especially if they keep drafting and adding free agents at this rate. But that's all I have for you guys. If you're a Panthers fan, let me know what you think in the comment section below about the grade. Was it too high? Do you feel like there was a transaction I didn't talk about that you feel like are going to have a bigger impact on the roster, or even training camp news right now that you feel like you're hearing about some guys that could possibly break out and be that next guy? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you're not a footballologist yet, I don't know what you're waiting on. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button today and become a footballologist. And stay safe, football fans.